And this is the Thunder Channel. Look, we talk about nootropics, testosterone, performance, feeling, performing, and functioning awesomely on this channel. Please subscribe if you're into that stuff. Hit the bell to get notified of all the content. We've got epic nootropic products, which I'll explain later, but as an introduction, number one, the Cortex stack. Number two, the Torque stack. If you need to hire me for biohacking consulting, you can do that at livecortex.com. And again, I'll explain all this stuff later. Also, quick one to mention, I will be on Vigorous Steve's podcast tomorrow. I think the actual podcast is going to launch and be live on his channel on Sunday. It's going to be epic. So stay tuned for that. All right, so let's talk about activating beast mode with this stimulant nootropic, and that is LTyrosine. And I've actually come to realize that tyrosine is one of the best stimulants there is. And now look, lately in the nootropic sphere or the performance sphere, tyrosine's kind of taken a backseat, right, to some of the new shinier objects. And one of the primary reasons for that is there are YouTubers that are talking up new products. And if you look in their bios, there's usually a link to the products and their affiliate link is attached to it. So in many cases, YouTubers haven't even tried these new products. They just want you to buy them so they can get commission. It's just really messed up the biohacking sphere right now. But tyrosine is a tried and true stimulant nootropic compound with an epic safety profile that provides a pretty awesome brain performance state. So look, tyrosine is 2 steps away from usable brain dopamine, and it's also 2 steps away from norepinephrine. Now, the utility of tyrosine is that, again, you have a pretty straight shot to usable brain dopamine, which is going to give you that kind of motivated energy to do stuff and be interested in what you're doing, and brain stable norepinephrine. Now, norepinephrine, the subjective feel of norepinephrine is like alertness. It's energy. It's stimulant conquer energy. A lot of people compare taking L-tyrosine to taking Adderall, right? It's on that same plane. So this is how it works. You dose a reasonable amount. This is important because this stuff can overstimulate you of tyrosine, and that range is in the kind of 20 to 250 milligram range, call it. Synthesize that L-tyrosine into Dopa. Some of that Dopa gets converted to usable dopamine via Dopa decarboxylase. It's just a conversion enzyme. And then from Dopa, some of that original tyrosine gets converted to norepinephrine via, I think it's dopamine B-hydroxylase, which is a norepinephrine conversion enzyme. So you're converting into Dopa, which is going to make you make more dopamine. Then you're converting some of that Dopa into norepinephrine. Now, downstream through another long-named conversion enzyme, some of that norepinephrine will get converted to regular epinephrine. Anyway, then, after taking tyrosine through all these conversions to subsequent neurotransmitters, you're left with 3 very powerful alertness-based and motivation neurotransmitters. And these are collectively called the catecholamines. Now, just as an optimization, if you paired that with a cholinergic nootropic like Noopept or one of the racetams, or maybe even citicoline or something, well, then you have a synthesis of 3 alertness-based neurotransmitters, and then you have a functional neurotransmitter in terms of information processing called acetylcholine on top of that. So look, how I use tyrosine. I don't dose it a whole lot because it's very potent, and I have a lot of other options, but when I do, I dose it between 100 and 150 milligrams. And look, like clockwork, this is why I love it so much, and it's kind of tried and true. Gives me energy, gives me alertness. It's like a beast mode activator. There's a certain mental state that you can get in where you look at your to-do list or you draft a to-do list, right? You just want to get stuff done. All right, so that said though, you can actually surgically make tyrosine better by bringing in another nootropic, very potent actoprotector nootropic called bromontane. Now, bromontane, to give you the very simple explanation, is going to foster the expression of the conversion enzymes that take the tyrosine and then turn it into these other neurotransmitters. Well, then you're heightening the expression of Dopa decarboxylase, tyrosine hydroxylase. These are the conversion enzymes that take your tyrosine and turn it into dopamine. So by taking bromontane with L-tyrosine, you both foster the precursor availability to the catecholamine neurotransmitters and the conversion ability as it goes through its steps to reach those endpoint neurotransmitters. Look, people can take this just to kind of get good stimulation and energy to do work or whatever, but where I think this has a lot of utility is in people that aren't synthesizing enough of the catecholamines. A lot of people are walking around for a variety of underlying causes with a lot of fatigue. And a good degree of people's fatigue in a lot of cases is actually the lack of synthesis of catecholamines. Like, it's very hard to have someone be extremely fatigued when their catecholamine synthesis is like up to par. There are inflammatory conditions, whether from the gut or whether it's long COVID or other, that are essentially cytokine and pro-inflammatory cytokine mediated conditions which disrupt synthesis of neurotransmitters. That if you were to bring L-tyrosine into the mix in those cases, you would at least supplement, I mean, this is like the definition of supplement, you'd be supplementing the synthesis of those neurotransmitters. You're actively getting in the middle of that process by taking tyrosine. Well, hopefully you're, in that example, you're working on the underlying inflammatory state that is happening. Like, that needs to be targeted too. You can't just supplement with the neurotransmitters. But anyway, what's cool about this is if you are suffering from some sort of thing that is causing you to have fatigue because of a lack of dopamine and norepinephrine synthesis, then like you can take L-tyrosine and essentially bypass that, right? Like, you don't have to be a non-productive slouch. You can actually get stuff done. And here's an interesting anecdotal on that. So 9 years ago, I got mono. I was running a company at the time, but I got mono, and mono, the virus that causes mono is Epstein-Barr virus. And I actually had like a long run with mono, right? The virus that causes mono, it's the Epstein-Barr virus. Like, I don't know, it had settled in my gut. I just like decided to sit down. My immune system obviously had a hard time, dealing with it. And yeah, it wreaked a lot of havoc on my energy. I mean, the fatigue element of it was like the worst part. I mean, it was uber crushing, debilitating. And I was running a company at the time. My previous company's a technology services company. And so like I had to be functional. So I started dosing L-tyrosine. Now look, I was dosing 500 to 1,000 milligrams of this to get rid of this fatigue. And I'm going to get to like why most people don't need that dose. That was a lot. I just needed it. But it worked. Like, I was back. Like, I was functioning awesome. I had the energy to run my company, and this was in the beginning stages of starting Cortex Labs as well. Now, that's an extreme situation, right? I had crushing, debilitating fatigue. So, folks that don't have that degree of fatigue are going to do a lot better on lower doses. But if you're somewhere in the middle, I mean, maybe a mid-range dose like 300 to 500 milligrams is going to be effective for you. Now, last major point, look, tyrosine is amazing, but there is a caveat, I guess, and that is you run the risk of overstimulation and potentially panic attacks. So those of you that are inclined to have anxiety especially, you kind of got to be careful with dosing tyrosine. You should probably start small and then work your way up. Just monitor how you're faring the entire time you're taking it. I suppose I should mention that there is a more bioavailable version of tyrosine. It's called NALT, or N-acetyl L-tyrosine. It's basically just tyrosine that's acetylated, and the acetylation of it crosses the blood-brain barrier easier. But what the research says about that is that the serum tyrosine concentrations, which ultimately is what matters, is either not higher, it's about the same, or not much higher. So look, I mean, you can take NALT. I've taken NALT. It's very potent. It's actually convenient. Some nootropics companies make NALT nasal spray. So you spray a spray or two of NALT into your nose intranasally. And yeah, I mean, it seems to hit you a little more potently or quicker or something, right? Because of the bioavailability. But I mean, the effects in my anecdotal, and I think a lot of my clients as well, they're not substantially more pronounced, right? Like, from my perspective, just as I use like modafinil as opposed to armodafinil and FL-modafinil, sure, I've tried those things, but I like to stick with tried and true. Tyrosine itself is a very, very effective compound at stimulating you, giving you motivated energy, converting into dopamine and norepinephrine, and then eventually epinephrine, removing crushing fatigue that is preventing you from living your life. This stuff is magic. But otherwise, people that feel normal largely but want to optimize their brain performance, tyrosine is like beast mode Activator. I hope that's been useful, and if I've taught you something interesting, please consider subscribing to the channel. I wanted to mention again, I will be on Vigorous Steve's podcast tomorrow, Friday. I don't know if it's going to be live or not, but I know that the whole conversation essentially is going to be posted on Vigorous Steve's channel on like Sunday or Monday. All right. So go subscribe to Vigorous Steve if you're not already to see that conversation. It's going to be awesome because Steve talks about hormones, bodybuilding, physiology, testosterone, things of that nature. And I talk about nootropics. So that stuff converging is going to be epic. I wanted to mention that we just dropped a 30% off coupon code on the Cortex Nootropic stack. That is our stack for motivated, stimulated energy, but also verbal fluency and increased processing speed. You can buy the Cortex stack in the description of this video. The coupon code for that is 30 now, just 30 now. Enter it at checkout. Literally takes 30% off a singular purchase of the product. Second stack, Torque. I mean, this stuff is 6 to 8 hours of clean stimulant energy. It's like turn the brain on. I almost called it gear, like get into gear. It's a very, very potent nootropic stack. It's like 25 minutes later after you administer it, you are going to notice a major difference in how your brain is moving. My friends, that is beast mode activation. The Torque stack you can buy in the description of this video or at livecortex.com. You won't regret trying Torque. If you don't have a bottle of Torque at your workstation, you are missing out. Lastly, if you need to hire me to help you interpret your blood work, to help you develop a nootropic regimen, to help you develop an energy regimen, to get to the bottom of some of your major issues, whether it's related to testosterone, sexual function, or brain function, you can do that at livecortex.com. We have a number of different programs ranging from singular calls with me to get an expert weighing in on your situation and advice to larger scale programs. For those of you with the budgets, you want somebody kind of one-on-one ongoingly working with you, book one of those larger scale programs. They are incredible and we help a lot of men. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, everybody. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you, and I will talk to you on the next one.